everyone, welcome back to the portrait series. In this class, male portrait, we're going to focus on the planes and structure of the head and then really pay attention to the shading. I'll walk you through how I draw a middle-aged or 20 to 30 something male portrait. As you already know, structure is everything in portrait drawing. If you want your portrait to feel solid, you have to make sure the perspective and the proportion are correct first. The reference I'm using today is an AI-generated image I found on Pinterest. It's a very typical three-quarter view for male portrait. I usually start this type of male portrait with my student after we practice the facial features, because compared to female, senior, or teenager portrait, this one is a bit more straightforward and has a very standard drawing process. That's why I recommend starting with a male portrait like this as your first full head. You can simply follow my steps. I'll try to make each stage as clear as possible. So first, I slightly draw the overall outline of the head and face. Then I separate the front plane and the side plane of the face so that the structure is clear. Once I'm happy with the basic structure, I move on to placing the darkest value that include the hair mass, the eyebrow, eyes, and the shoulder area. It's helpful to use a softer pencil like a 3B. You don't need a super sharp tip here. A slightly dull pencil is actually better. Use it to quickly mess in the dark shapes rather than drawing tiny details. After that, you can take a blending stump and then gently soften those areas to create texture and a smooth transition, so the face starts to feel more unified and natural in its gradation. After establishing the darkest dark from the head down into the shoulder, you start to build the shoulder shapes on the face. In this reference, the light is coming from the top left, so the upper side of the head will be brighter and the right side will be fall into shadow. Think of the entire head as a sphere with a plane carved into it. If you keep that in mind, it becomes much easier to wrap your shading around the form and make the portrait look three-dimensional. We keep comparing the front plane and the side plane, slowly turning the form with value and always protecting the highlights where the lights hit the most. Now, after finish blocking the darkest area, we move on to the face itself. For the face, the value should be much lighter than the hair and then the deepest shadows. We have to treat it separately because the skin has a different texture and different kind of tone. We also means we need to downgrade our pencil choice. How I switch to an HB and skip to 2B. I keep the pencil very sharp so I can apply clean, control shading on the face. My goal is to keep the face neat and clean so the portrait feels beautiful and refined. In this stage, I will quite close to the paper so I can really focus on the detail. I also cut the edge of my eraser to make a sharp tip and treat that eraser like a white pencil. I use it to pull back highlights in area where I blend too much or where I want to bring back to the brightest spot. The eraser became my main tool for the light, and HB pencil is my main tool for the mid-dark value. Sometimes I also use my finger to soften blending area that need a smooth and a natural gradation from dark to light. Always think about how to make it feel like the skin. This is not a still life object. A portrait is not only about the feature and expression, it's also about the structure and then the surface, how the skin and tissue catch the light. I often joke with my students that by the end of the portrait study, your hand will look a bit dirty because your fingers became part of the tool set as well. When we feel the darker area of the portrait are mostly established, we can move into the light area. But remember, the right side of the face is not flat at all. The face is full of plane. Even in the bright parts, we need to show those subtle changes. This is why the sculptor Rodin talks about the touching and feeling the form before making art. He would feel the object in three-dimensional first. If you only look at the person in flat, two-dimensional way without thinking in 3D, it's become very hard to draw the structure clear. So for portrait drawing, observation is everywhere. Training yourself to observe with the three-dimensional mindset, feel the plane, feel the turning of the form, and then translate it into the shading. That's the basic mental foundation for drawing a convincing portrait.